Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tree Actions, the Human Forestry Podcast. And with me, as always, is my trusted partner in fun, Tony Tresselt. How are you doing, Tony?
Morning, everyone. Doing fine.
Good. And joining us today, I believe, I'm pretty sure Madison,
Yep.
Wisconsin. It is an old friend and, co-taught with Sean over the years, but I just want to introduce everyone to Sean Gere. Welcome, Sean.
Yeah, good to be here. Thanks, Dwayne.
We ask all of our guests the same question, and some of our listeners are probably used to it by now, but if you would just start us off by sharing with us your first memory where you recall having a connection to trees
Easy.
or a tree.
You guys can see me, but see this scar right here on my forehead? Yeah. When I was 5 years old, I've been climbing trees my entire life. When I was 5 years old, I was climbing a big silver maple in my backyard. It was winter, of course, but I needed to climb trees because that's what I do. And I was wearing those kind of big old black galoshes. Tree was covered in ice. My parents had put railroad ties around the tree. I think you see where this is going. But and thankfully, knock on wood, that is the only tree I've ever fallen out of. As an arborist, clients, everyone like, oh, you ever fall out of a tree? Like, yeah, when I was 5 years old. So that was my connection to a tree. But the first time I really felt a connection to a tree was we would go up north and got a family place in northern Wisconsin. And, there was this white pine on the property, and I would just climb up there, and I saw an eagle nest right next to it in another tree. And, it totally changed my perspective on things. And that was the main connection. But I've had so many more. I'm definitely connected to trees.
Well, one of my memories working with you was you were the first person that really introduced me to the chicken of the woods and the fruit of the woods, the fungi that are edible and the plethora that there are. And I believe you're still quite a connoisseur of that art.
It's funny. I was doing training with Rip. I think it was in Virginia, and I was walking onto the site with Rip, and I just completely geeked out. I'm like, oh my gosh, Lady Boris, so furious. Which is chicken of the woods.
Yeah.
So yes, I am a fungi nerd too. So I'm pretty involved with things. Helped start a group here in Madison, doing some stuff, microremediation, and involved with fungi groups. So
Yeah.
I'm a mushroom nerd.
You're a fun guy. Did you ever get to chat with Shiga about that stuff? I don't know how much you got to hang out with him.
No, first time I met Shiga was at a seminar in Milwaukee, and no, we never really talked about that stuff. Okay. So I was more into edibility of mushrooms at the time.
Yeah.
And so just mycophage. No, I didn't get to spend enough time with Shiga. You never get to spend enough time with anyone.
Right.
So, as I'm learning.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm curious, where did your fungi connection begin, or how did that like combine with your tree ascent?
It's funny actually. I told the story yesterday, but my uncle was a chef, and he was kind of grooming me to be a chef. So when I was 8 years old, I got a crepe pan, which I still have. When I was 9, I got Jacques Pepin's La Technique cooking book. So anyway, so I was always interested in food. And then when I moved up to Madison, I got involved with some groups and, started foraging, looking around for food. Then being an arborist, the tie-in was, food, trees. And so fungi came into the picture as an edible thing to forage.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's all kind of tied in together. So
Interesting. Oh,
yeah,
the first thing you mentioned, that's some sort of pen you said?
a pen.
Yeah, well, you mentioned,
Oh, the author of the book, Jacques Pepin.
oh, Jacques Pepin. Okay. So I'd never heard of that. That like,
Oh,
am I expressing my ignorance here? But
Jacques Pepin's a very famous French chef. He had a cooking show with Julia Child.
okay.
He's incredibly famous in that world.
Right.
He's no Rip Tompkins. I'm just saying. You know what I mean? We live in a fairly narrow viewed world in general. So yes, he is a very famous chef.
So how did your journey into actually climbing trees for money or for work? How did that take place?
Yeah, well, that is the only job I've had in my entire adult life. Being an arborist and tree lover. But I was going to school for anthropology. I wanted to be an archaeologist. I'd done archaeological work since I was a kid, and going to camps and things like that. And one summer it was the 90s, and it's cool to get a tan, so I wanted to work outside. And I was like, well, I've done some rock climbing, I could certainly climb trees. What the heck. And so I applied at Care of Trees Hendrickson, so John Hendrickson's company at the time, and they hired me. And actually I had applied at Chemlon also, because I thought, what's the difference? Landscaping, tree stuff, it's all the same.
Yeah.
And but thankfully, I could not get the spray pattern right for Chemlon, so the company hired me. And I thought, oh, what the heck? I actually went to school with Kathy Hendrickson. She was in my same grade in high school. And I thought, yeah, sure, what the heck? Let's try that one. And, I can climb rocks. I can definitely climb trees. So started doing it, and for one summer, and then I found myself, well, I went back to school, and then, every weekend or whenever I'd be home, I would go to the tree care company and hang out, say hi to Norm, whatever, in Norm Hall.
Hmm.
And I found myself more and more drawn to that. And so I quit school and went back to tree work. So
So you actually worked in the same office that Norm, and was Scott there also then?
Scott wasn't in the picture when I started, because he was working for another company that eventually got bought by Care of Trees. And yeah, it was there was just one office in Wheeling, Illinois, Chicago suburb, I think, and then there were some other offices around town, but that was kind of the main one that I worked at. Yeah, I was in the same office as John and Pam and his wife and
Yeah.
Kathy, his daughter. So yeah, it was definitely Care of Trees was a little smaller. I got and Norm was my boss, so he was my crew leader, or not crew leader. He was my foreman. So and then Brian Kowicka was my crew leader at one point, and
Wow.
I got lucky and fell in with the right crowd. And to be fair, I wouldn't be doing tree work now. I would have quit after that summer if I had worked for a different company. I love the emphasis on safety. Um, it's funny. Everyone will always ask me like, "Oh, are you some kind of Mountain Dew drinking, bungee jumping wild man? Red Bull?" Like, no, I'm the oldest of 8 kids. I'm a worrier. I'm a safety fan. So when Care of Trees had a good safety policy, I wouldn't have done tree work with a different company or continued with it.
Interesting. So what do you think it was, Sean, about that made the company like that and the people that worked there? Like how did that get instilled? Like was it John or was it the people that he attracted or how did they keep, because some tree services just don't evolve that way at all, as we know, and some do, as John's did. As so, what like any observations or thoughts on how that happened?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I always, I know many people here in town and have experienced other tree companies. I think everything comes from the top down. So I would give thanks to John Hendrickson ultimately because, the leader, the ultimate leader, sets the tone. And, I've worked with companies or seen companies that, it's like, oh, I can't get these guys to wear chaps, and like, oh, hold on, I got to go make a cut. Oh, aren't you going to wear chaps? It's like, it's just one cut. You know what I mean? So the leader of the company sets the tone. And so then, the same employees are, they're going to say, the boss did it that way. We can do it that way. Just one cut.
Yeah, I think there is a lot. Like many times when I was teaching, I think particularly when I would notice maybe an eye roll or just you could just kind of sense that, okay, this is what we got to do when we're getting taught, but this ain't the way we really do shit, man. And I would say, whether you guys believe in not one-handing a saw and you think it's the only way, but the fact is, what you actually do out there is really what's being taught, and you are the teachers. You're not. Here we are coming to teach you stuff, and we do believe in it, but if you don't do it, you guys are really teaching the most powerful lessons to everybody out there, right?
Yeah. I'm not gonna name names, but someone I know who's the head of safety at a very large company. Um, Back a while ago, when the interwebs was just starting up, there was some sort of tree group, and the topic of one-handing a chainsaw came up. And I'm a strong, strong advocate for not one-handing a chainsaw. I've done it. I literally counted the times. I've done it 7 times
Right.
in a 34-year career.
Yeah.
Um, and it came up, and then I met the guy at a trade show, and online he was saying, "Oh yeah, yeah, it's really bad," and the whole thing. And so this guy's safety director of a large company, and we're talking. He's like, "Yeah, yeah, I saw your posting and everything," and but I mean, come on, man, in real life, right? And I thought, wow, this guy is the head safety instructor, and once again, he's setting the tone for the company.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, it's cliche, but you gotta walk the walk also. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that kind of filters itself from the top down then, right, too. Like, when you have people like Norm and Scott that evolve, like, they all were started as well from,
oh yeah,
stuff in a chipper, right? So they evolved into their own sense of feeling, like how they felt about safety. I wonder, did it start before they picked up a rope or right when they first started? Like, where does that come from?
I mean, I think like you say, it filters down. I mean, I firmly believe the top sets the tone, and then people come and go. It filters people out. If they agree with policy and want to be a part of that, they stay. And so that, translates down to people. And, Norm, I listened to the Norm Hall episode, and yeah, Norm started with Todd line hitch on 3-strand rope, and, probably Manila or Sissel,
Yeah.
and, but he evolved. And actually, the very first time I did one hand a saw, I had been climbing for maybe a couple weeks, and Norm asked me to help him out with a climbing seminar for the training in house.
Yeah.
And I'm up in the tree, and I hear Norm on the down low, and he says, "Okay, now Sean will go ahead and make a cut." And I grabbed my chainsaw and I reached out. It was a rear-handled, really heavy Echo, and cut with one hand. And I saw Norm just kind of put his hand over his face and just kind of walk away. He had a little bit of slaining to do to the guy. So yeah, so that was number one. The first time I one-handed saw, and then my entire career at Care of Trees, I never did it again. So, I did it once out in Virginia when I was. And I heard you guys swear. Am I allowed to swear
Oh
on
yeah,
the? Yeah, I was scared shitless in a tree, and I just reached out and closed my eyes and made a cut. So that was number two. So
it's funny that it's kind of surprising to me that it's such a prominent topic to this day. Like it's one of those perennial or immortalized things. Like it just doesn't seem to go away. And I don't know if the frequency has changed really out there at all or not. Especially with battery saws now.
yeah,
But
fair point.
and that's what's funny is it's always comes down to production and speed. It's so much easier and faster, and I just don't see it. And it's funny. I don't know how people. I think it's just ignorance or just anytime you're going to learn something different, if you started out that way and you didn't know any different, and you're getting the habit of it, then I guess
Right.
it would slow you down to learn a new method, I suppose. The other thing about it is it really is one of those matter of time things, before you do something to hurt yourself. And if you don't hurt yourself, your demonstration and teaching it for your entire career, somebody else is going to inherit your lottery ticket.
I think I definitely, from my time with Arbor Master and training with you and Rip and Ken and everyone else, uh, a lot of acronyms, things like that. But SEE, safer, easier, more efficient,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So the one handing a chainsaw, is it easier? Sometimes. Is it more efficient? Possibly. Is it safer? Never. So it doesn't fit those qualifications. So that's a good way to do it. Is it in the short term, like you say, maybe it'll work. The whole thing for me in tree work is I hate the word maybe. If you ask someone, "Oh, do you think this tree will fit in this space if we just drop it from the ground?" Yeah, it should work, or maybe it'll work. You know what I mean? I I don't want to hear that, and I don't go with that. Eliminating variables is what I'm about. So I want to hear it will work, and then we do it. So
Yeah.
that's the way I operate, and it's treated me well. And like I said, I've been an arborist for 34 years, and I've never had a major accident. I mean, you and I doing training, Tony, obviously, the same thing. People, we can cite people who are, passed away from tree accidents, and people who are in wheelchairs, people who I've seen, I know people have taken chainsaws in the face, and which is a sad one to have to say. If you just position yourself a little bit better,
Yeah, it's a good way. It is limiting variables. You can't
Yeah.
eliminate them all, but that's one of the key things with planning your work and working your plan. I remember Tim Ard, that was the one of the main lessons. Accidents are unplanned events, so plan your work and work your plan and you'll have less accidents. And all about eliminating variables because, you're working with trees. There's always an element of unknown, but you don't need to add any more.
Like it's funny when I would talk to people and they say, "Oh, you're teaching people the safe way to work with trees." The safe way to be 80 feet up in a tree that's dead with a chainsaw. Um, I always I always refer to as we're teaching them the least unsafe way to do tree work.
Yeah.
It's obviously a dangerous job, so eliminating variables is important.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how many arborists think about it, but it's sort of like, a demolition. What do they call it? A bomb disposal? Someone dead.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly.
Red
That's not
wire,
the
blue wire.
safe
Do I
way.
take the 10-foot piece or 6-foot piece?
Right, exactly. Yeah,
Because
you know it.
it is that one snip and, oops, it could be a big
Yeah,
deal, right? Uh, yeah. And then I remember the first time I really clued into that, I was listening to John Ball when he was talking, and he started doing his talk about the arbor stats. And he said he commented it was interesting how, we do this incredibly high risk activity, a profession, job for pay,
yeah,
and it's not really identified in a hazard pay scale, like where a lot of dangerous type, where like underwater welders, get paid
right,
a lot more money because it's so dangerous, right? And for some reason in tree care, that never has evolved like that. And even the bidding mentality, like will go to be the lowest guy to do the biggest, nastiest removal to be the cheapest price. It just it's counterintuitive.
right. And around here, winter is coming, so that introduces a lot more variables. Obviously, you both know that, and clients always ask, "Oh, do you give winter discounts?" Like everything takes 3 times as long, and it's twice as dangerous.
Yeah.
When you've got to wipe a foot of snow off a branch above you just so you can, get up there.
Yep. Yeah. The one time I recall, like I was taught climb up, tie in. If you have to
Oh
make a
yeah,
cut on the way up, fine, but try to avoid doing any work on the way up. Just get up there. No tying
get
in.
up,
Lanyard on your
yep,
side, rope on the other D ring, and just climb to the top. Tie in, go to work. And either get a boost or a ladder to the first branch, and away you go. And
or shooting up.
yep, whatever. And I remember climbing. It was probably my first season, and it was winter. I was on my first year of school, and I was climbing up, and it was spring, so it was starting. Had some warm days, and this one day it had kind of melted the day before, so it was first thing in the morning. And unbeknownst to me, there was about a half a centimeter of ice on the top of every limb, just on the
Right.
top. And I got going and I got up to a bit of an overextended reach and I was doing like a pull up and I had kind of jumped and my feet had left the branch below me and I gave it a pull but my hand slipped off and
Oh
I
man.
just was falling, but I landed perfectly on the limb below that I didn't slip off and I was standing there. Then I suddenly realized, holy mackerel, like
Yeah.
if I had missed that limb, I would have been like the ping pong, like the pinball wizard there.
Pachinko.
My head would have been the
Yeah.
silver
Right.
ball bouncing off of bumpers called branches. And that would have been and I was kind of like, Funny thing, it took me probably 2 years to ever, when I first saw Throwline, I was just like, whatever.
Yeah.
Were you the same that way?
Oh my gosh. Well, care of trees, to be fair, it was me, it wasn't them. I was definitely encouraged to always be tied in, but, having a rock climbing background,
Right.
I mean, unless you're doing an aid climb, you're not using the rope as a tool necessarily. It's just there for safety.
Yeah.
So, I do remember when I transferred out to Virginia, and that's a crazy story, but when Scott Profit was my foreman, and I do remember working at a Botanic Gardens, and this was my first exposure to throw line. Was out there. We always had a throw line in Chicago. It was about 40 feet of like cotton clothesline with with that big black like 30-pound ball at the end
Yeah.
that would bounce all over so
Yeah.
nobody used it. It was always coiled up in the truck. But I was working with my coworker, and he was trying to throw line into the tree, and you know, strike 3, strike 7, strike 20, and I thought, man, this is stupid. I just threw on my saddle, free climbed up at the top of the tree, started working while he's still messing around with his throw line, and then finish the climb, feel like John Wayne, the whole thing, and get to the ground. And Scott Profit comes up to me, of course, in his classic way, and he says, yeah, it was pretty cool. You got up there pretty fast, right? It If you had fallen to the ground, wouldn't be so cool, right? And that was kind of my awakening, you know. I do remember being on a job at Care of Trees, and I was stemming literally up about 70 feet, just on one lead,
Yeah.
and then literally just kind of reaching over and grabbing another one, and almost in splits. I was a gymnast, so I was a
Yeah.
lot more flexible. And I'm completely free climbing between these two leads at 70 feet. And the sales guy comes out and he's get tied in. Of course I go, whoa. But yes, I got tied in, and I've had the same experiences as you. Reaching up, and there's a squirrel nest in March, and the mama squirrel comes out and starts tearing up my hand, and luckily I was tied in that time.
Right.
So
Right. 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 Tony, I don't know if we haven't had this chat before with the other guests. I don't remember if that was something that was part of your initial career or not. Like boot up the ass, get up there and start tie in and go to work.
No, not so much. Like I said, like Sean, I fell into really good crowds early, with good habits. From the Bartlett tree and my dad working for Bartlett and my brother and everything. And, when he started the company, the people that came with him. So, I mean, we would free climb like small trees. I know that's not any better, but that was kind of but I mean, for the
just
longest
one,
time, it was in the regs, right? As long as you had 2 points of contact, right?
Yeah.
right?
You were good to
Yeah.
go. So, I think while I might have been able to do it, I probably shied away from it because I just liked working with rope, right? Like I enjoyed the process of tying a knot and using it to get me into the tree. I just really enjoyed that part of it, and then when I got exposed to like, senders and things like that, I thought this is even better, right? Like I love the technical aspect of the climb from that. So I don't think, for me, I enjoyed that more than free climbing a tree. So for me it wasn't that big of an option, like that. Even if I would have been able to take it, and with the whole one handing, I think maybe I think some of my risk adverseness comes from because I started doing tree work right after I got out of the army, so I knew about risk, right? I had a different perspective on how much one is willing to give and what you're willing to live and die for, than a lot of people had. So to me, it was like, this job's already hazardous. Why would I make it worse? and and what I found, like Sean, I can count on one time the times that I one-handed a chainsaw, and when I look back on it, all 3 times, it's because I wasn't good enough. right?
Yeah.
So what I found in my mental makeup told me, it's like, if I really want to reach out there with one hand, it's because I'm not a good enough climber. I'm not a good enough arborist. I'm just not good enough. And I took that as a challenge, right? And I've used that in training, and I've had people get really angry at me, like, "You're saying I suck?" I'm like, "Yes, yeah, I am. That's exactly what I'm saying. I don't know how to put it any other way, you know."
It's in
And
the instructor manual, right?
exactly, you know. So, but I think a lot of my shy away from that came from, I had a different perspective on risk than a lot of people, and probably the biggest was a lot like Sean. Like, I just fell into a really good group, you know, just the people that, you know. Can you imagine if your airline pilot said, "Yeah, I think I can land the plane. We'll be okay. It should work. You know, it
And
should
maybe
work."
it'll work.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know. So it's
I've
not
done
like
it
it's, you
before.
know. Yeah, I mean, yeah,
yeah.
you know. I mean, we have two other wheels. It should be okay. You know, like, can you, like, what's amazing is what people will accept, right? You would never accept that, you know, from your airline pilot, but you'll accept it from, you know, your arborist all the time. I think it'll work. Like, you know, your electrician comes in and goes, I think I got it right. It should be good. Hit the switch, see what happens.
But you know what though? It's funny that there's a lot of people though that would actually roll with it.
Oh yeah,
You know, they'd
yeah.
actually, you know, because, well, you know, I, you know, who'd you get to do the wiring? Well, I knew a guy, and he worked with a guy, and but I tell you, it was like dude, the whole place was got done for $500, you know, and it's like really, yeah, and like maybe it's okay, maybe you know,
Right.
but it's the I think that's part of it is what people are willing to accept too. You know, like there's people that would accept the pilot saying, "I think I got it. Don't, it'll be okay. Don't worry about it." Okay, man, right on. And that's also I find fascinating as well because that's part of what fuels this, especially this industry, maybe any industry, but is the consumer and what they're either not willing to pay for or what they're willing to accept. And maybe they're ignorant to it or maybe they're not, but it, you know, hey, he's the cheapest guy. I'm trusted. He'll get her done. And
Yeah.
I'm not worried he's going to maybe die or wreck my house. It's just interesting to me.
It To me, it all boils down to, I mean, seriously, life is about risk and how much you're willing to accept. You know, people ride motorcycles without helmets. You know, that's the risk they're willing to accept. To be fair, when you get up, you run the risk of, you know, tripping, getting hit by a car, blah blah blah. If you stay in bed sores, you know, muscles atrophy, the whole thing. Where are you going to balance the risk, and
Yeah.
what do you accept? But to be fair, we're all adults, and you know, we are here for this life right now, and it's your life. So I don't begrudge anyone that. You know, I would strongly encourage people to be a little safer, but people make their own choices.
Yeah, I like that. I think that that's important for me to remember, Sean. It's something I'm trying to get better at, but it's the whole judgment thing. Uh,
Oh yeah,
you know,
yeah,
because it's
good
easy
point.
for me to judge somebody that does one hand a saw or, you know, and like the reasons why they might do that or why they have done it, you know, that's lost in that attitude of you don't know what you're doing, right? It's, yeah, and, yeah, you know, and people have choice and it's not mine to say it's wrong necessarily, right? Like I can offer an alternate view or a suggestion, but as soon as I say it's bad or wrong, you know, you can't help but be in the realm of judgment, right?
Well, it's also, you know, Tony mentioned, you know, when he would talk to people and they would say, "Oh, you're saying I suck, right?" And it's, for me, actually, I've found the most success, and it is a cliche too, but not approaching with judgment, but approaching with curiosity. I mean,
Right.
I ask the people, like, well, you know, why do you feel you need the one hand, or why, you know, did you take that risk?
Yeah.
And I'm truly a little bit more curious, and I don't judge. I do remember, it's a little bit of a tangent, but I was at a TCI, when it was called TCI,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
trade show, and there was a company, I think it was Predator Tree Service. I don't know if you remember those guys. There were a
Yeah,
bunch of
I
guys
know that name.
walking around, and it was this like a wildcat, a cougar or something with this claw, like reaching down, and there were not rip marks, but like drawn rip marks on the shirt,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
like, was hanging out with a group of guys, and it's like, oh, predator trees. Are you preying on trees or people with a fixed income? Who are you preying on? And they were talking about, and everyone was judging them and making fun of them. And I said, well, the guys are at a great place to learn some stuff. You know what I mean? So let's not, discourage them from being here or make fun of them. Like,
Yeah.
just find out why they're topping, or things like that, and just encourage them. So
Yeah,
seems to work better.
I think a lot of times, and this is something that, we would talk a lot about, that again, Tim Ard would talk about it, the thing about change, that change is to be feared and resisted. And I think that ultimately when that's what it comes down to is they just don't know any different, right?
Yeah,
That it's what they saw, it's what they learned, and then they perfect that as an art, and a pride comes with that. And then, someone like us comes along that knows difference or other ways, maybe more ways, not necessarily better ways. That's for each person to decide, but it's to be willing to share that. And then it comes down to having an open mind. And I think that's a big part of it too, is you have to be open minded and willing to say, hey, maybe there's another way. And that's the
right.
real trick, is to get, and I shouldn't even only like to use the word trick. I think it's to honor people where they're at and to respect everything they got. I'll never forget that Tim told a story in in his podcast episode, but the story of the mental toolbox. I remember, Sean, do
Yeah.
you remember Tim telling
Well,
that story?
oh yeah, absolutely.
And he would, what struck me when I first heard that story was I heard him say loud and clear, look, whatever you've been doing got you here. Good on you. And you've
Yeah,
been, what it works. We're just going to look at other ways and maybe add some more tools to the toolbox. And all I ask is you keep an open mind, because you can't put tools in there if it's closed. And
yeah,
that was enough for me, because I'd seen enough things already. Like I saw him not, like I saw the way he started the saw and going, that's weird. And I saw this stuff, like just before he even got started, I was watching him. Everybody's always that whole thing about everybody's watching you, right? I don't think, I swear, like you've taught half your class in the first half hour getting set up and ready while people are showing up. You've already won
yeah,
or lost them. Like,
yeah.
or
You
you definitely
got it.
planted some serious seeds and you need to build on that. And Tim was a master of that. I felt like, yeah. Anyways, and it's funny, isn't it? I guess as I'm getting older, I'm finding what there are lessons that apply to the rest of your life.
Oh, absolutely.
So, how do you feel, Sean? Could you articulate for us ways you feel being involved with trees as an arborist and working in trees, how that has impacted you in your life, your personal life or in your spiritual life or whatever you're willing to share about that? Is there parallels or lessons that you've transversed into those realms?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I at 19, walking in the woods, I did kind of have an epiphany, just as far as trees, and this is before I was actually working with trees. I realized just the magic of everything around us, and that was when I was getting into foraging, things like that. I think, well, negative impacts when I was traveling, obviously training. and I'd be on the road 2 to 3 weeks out of the month. That definitely impacted my life in a negative way. Yeah, wasn't good for relationships, things like that.
Right.
But yeah, just in general, appreciate. Well, working with different people has given me the insights and just fascination with language as far as different terminology. And I do want to mention too, you mentioned ignorance, and ignorance has negative connotations. It's a bad word, you know what I mean? You wouldn't go to a class and say, well, you guys are just ignorant and I'm going to show you some new things.
Yeah.
It's a bad thing, but ignorant literally means, denotatively, it means you just don't know.
Yeah.
There's no judgment. Um, but, inherently in the word, there is judgment. But as far as other things in tree work, it's made me more aware just of safety in general. And might be getting older. And like I say, hopefully older but wiser,
Mm.
not holder but wiser. Um, but maybe I won't try and pull ahead of that car and make a turn. Maybe I'll wait the extra couple of seconds
Mm.
because saving those 2 seconds. I always do the balance. Is it worth 2 seconds? Well, I could get killed. No, I'm gonna do something little safer, and I'm gonna bank those 2 seconds or pull out of the bank those 2 seconds. I do remember Scott Prophet talking about guys who would smoke and they would go to the truck to go get their cigarettes and stuff. He's like, well, that's why I started chewing. It's a lot more efficient. I can bank that time and save it for being a little safer somewhere else.
Banking the time. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, yeah,
I I'm gonna be a bit of a dog with a bone here. I want to just go back to a second when you were
sure.
19 and you said that you became aware or you had some type of experience. Can you just delve a little deeper into what you felt happened?
Sure. Well, I mean, I did a lot of traveling. I was a little lost at 19. I wasn't sure what I was going to do exactly, and I just get in my vehicle and say, "Oh, I'm going to Arkansas for the weekend." I got a 3-day weekend, and I'd spend 12 hours driving and get down there, and then pretty much turn and go back home. But I got exposed to a lot of different things and interactions with people, and different forests, different trees, different plants. And before that, I grew up basically in Chicago suburbs. I literally grew up 4 houses away from a really busy street, and then the second largest mall in Chicagoland.
Mm.
So that was my playground. And at 19, and then strongly when I was 21 and started climbing trees, and just all that wall of green crap over there, those are trees, you know, like, oh, I was used to, and being a skateboarder, I'm not looking for grass and trees. I'm looking for concrete,
Right.
That was I grew up with concrete. That was when I was 5 years old. I actually lied to my parents and I said I was going to my girlfriend's house down a couple blocks away. I walked across the street, this really busy street, and I went to the mall. And I bought a Superman figure and all this stuff. And so I was firmly entrenched in that life. So traveling around, walking in the woods because that's all there was where I was, and just kind of discovering things.
Wow.
So yeah, that was
So
That was
what was it that stood out to you? What did you see? What was it, a feeling? Was it a smell? Was it a
it was a feeling. It was just I do remember Evanston, Illinois. So like suburb of Chicago, but very close to the city. They were very proactive in their Dutch elm treatment.
right?
So they retained a lot of elms, and I know that we had relatives there, and so we drive there. But there's this cathedral crown of trees, like
Yeah.
in a lee of elm trees, and I always knew that just my whole body would just kind of relax, and my
Wow.
shoulders would come down, and neck muscles would relax, and that feeling. And so then just I had never done much hiking or anything. My parents were Chicago people, so we'd go out to the Tetons and like, hey, mom, can we cross that glacial runoff stream? And she's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's really narrow over there. You should cross there. Like, yeah, so my brother and I put on garbage bags and almost got swept down a mountain. And like, yeah, so we didn't know this kind of stuff. But so anyway, so when I, was walking in the woods, which I had never done, and
Oh,
just had this feeling. And then when I was 21 and climbing a tree in my neighborhood a block away from where I grew up, and you just get elevated and realize, oh, there's a tree canopy up here,
yeah,
and I don't really see many houses. And so a completely different perspective.
yeah,
And at this point, I mean, I know trees by my five senses, and maybe a sixth, and I know how trees taste.
yeah.
I'm having sawdust blown in my face.
Right.
I yeah, yeah.
So the taste. They definitely smell. Uh, feel.
Yep,
Sound. Yeah,
sure. Yeah. Leaves rustling, things like that, branches cracking,
yeah,
and just then that's trees too, but also, well, somebody starts up a chainsaw, you can hear if the chain's too tight. You know what I mean? I'll
yeah,
be I'll be in a tree and I'll be like, oh yeah, those guys are running steel.
yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's over there.
It's true.
Just a little more in tune to things too. And as far as yeah, I mean sight obviously, but yeah, you mentioned touch. For me, just that's the whole tactile thing. I mean, like a ginkgo tree. I realized that when we were working at Arlington military base right next to the cemetery out in DC. And, I was climbing a ginkgo tree and they're kind of waxy and a little bit soft.
Yeah.
I actually led a tree walk on Saturday for a local group. The group is called FUN, Friends of Urban Nature.
Wow.
And yeah, it was a good turnout, and we walked around and looked at trees. It was supposed to be a fall tree walk, but it's late fall here. I mean, there are no leaves on trees, but we compared the feel of hybrid elm, so American elm basically,
Yeah.
and then the honey locust, and just the rigidity, and then a silver maple,
Right.
which is a little bit soft. So yeah, it was good. We had some kids too, which is always nice, and the kids just get it. So
Right. Yeah. Kids have that. They're not as indoctrinated.
yeah, yeah. And I don't know what agenda you have, but I was thinking about this as I was listening to the Norm Hall show last night, and I do remember people have asked me, what's your favorite experience or whatever, but I do remember training, and I think it was you, I'm not going to mention where, but when you walk in, there are a group of guys with their arms folded, and
Yeah.
this was the one where they referred to the one person in the group who was a certified arborist as the arborist.
Right.
It just kind of in a derogatory way,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like, oh, he's full of themselves. But walking into that class and a lot of people with crossed arms and thinking like, well, what's this, you know, 30-year-old punk gonna teach me?
Yeah.
I've been doing 25 years and my pa's been doing it for whatever. But anyway, so I had that class, and it's always satisfying showing people new techniques, and you meet them at a trade show and they say, oh, this, what you showed me saved my life.
Yeah.
And when I got back home, I actually did a climbing demo at a community gardens for a group of special needs kids from a high school. And, I climbed up the tree and then I came down, did a little swing jump, the whole thing. And one of the kids just kind of ran up to me and he said, he had, their special needs kid, this kid had Down syndrome.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, can I give you a hug? I was so worried about you up there. And so it gave me a hug. It was just very, very sweet. And I thought, oh, wow, this is far more satisfying than training 20 guys who their arms maybe took a thing or two away. But
Right.
that was one of my more satisfying moments with working with trees.
Interesting. It makes me think of the trehab stuff that John Gathright talks about. Where he basically changed his career to because of that. He was a kind of a TV personality in Japan that kind of sort of an Oprah of Japan, really. And
Wow.
they did a show where on his show where people's dreams would come true, and this lady, disabled lady, wanted to climb a redwood,
Oh,
and they
cool.
picked it as the challenge to do, and I guess it turned into this major deal. And the long and short of it is, he ended up starting. When they finally got to California to do this, so they endeavored to do this thing, and it took them. It was the most monumental one they'd ever tried, and they couldn't. It got dark by the time they got up there. So and because of her, I can't remember if it was her strength or illness or whatever. Anyways, they had to spend the night in the tree. So they had to stay there and then come down the next morning. And the
Wow.
whole experience, he he developed something called Treehab, where he takes people of trauma or disabilities to the forest, either in trees or in and around trees, and uses that as a way to help people recover from different things. And it's just been fascinating, because there is a different, you mentioned it earlier when you were back home climbing, like it is a different world that I think as arborists, we are, and anyone who has ever been in a tree like we do as arborists, it's just, there's something you can't explain. I think it's imparted mystically, as, Norm Hall's dad says in that Legends video. I think it's imparted mystically by the trees, and we also know that the trees exude, gases and chemicals that calm us, that affect our mind. So it just intensifies that effect when you're in the canopy of a tree. And what a gift
Yeah.
and it just does something to people, and it even when you're in the forest on the ground, it does something as well. So, um, I'm not sure where I'm going, but you just got me thinking about all that.
Well, it's like the Japanese concept of forest bathing.
Yes.
Just to kind of renew the soul. I used to do some research work or collection and cyanwood collection, all sorts of different fun projects with different universities and things. But I have a friend who used to work for the DNR, Department of Natural Resources here in Wisconsin. She was a forest pathologist, got her master's in forest pathology. And when I was working in North Carolina on Hurricane Fran, she came down to visit her sister, who happened to live close to where I was, and we climbed the North Carolina state champion white pine
Mm.
in Pisgah National Forest. And, I got her into tree climbing, and we're in the top of the tree. It's, 160 feet tall, and she'd been working with trees her entire life. And it was just this snap, just this amazing, like, I've never experienced trees like this,
Yeah.
If we had an issue with a tree, instead of having a climber collect a sample, we would just drop the whole tree and take a look at it. So never experienced trees as living beings, essentially. And so that was just magic, when I was also North Carolina was a fun trip. I had a lot of good experiences. I went to Atlanta to climb with Peter, who started Tree Climbers International,
Pete
TCI.
Jenkins.
The other,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, Peter Jenkins, and basically super cool guy. And I just showed up at the park where they climb. They own the two trees, and I said, "Oh, you got a place to stay?" I said, "No, I just came here," and tossed me a key to his place, and whatever. And then he said, "Oh, here two people from Japan, and they don't speak English, brother and sister. They came here just to climb trees. Why don't you lead them up the tree?" And so me and another guy just communicated how to put on a saddle and get them up in the tree, and they literally came from Japan to climb a tree. And I got to experience that, getting them up a tree. Same thing. And once they got up there, completely different perspective.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. My son went to University of British Columbia, and in his class they had a program for people in various stages of illness or whatever it was. This one guy in his class was in a wheelchair, and he had listened to John's talk at the ISA in Washington. And he went inspired back home to see if he could ask this kid if he wanted to go up a tree, and they ended up making it happen. And
Oh, cool.
his particular illness, it's got a weird name, Nahiasen syndrome. It's a strange thing. He's perfectly acute in the brain, normal, but he has no control kind of over his bodily kind of functions. Like he jerks and has,
Right.
but he's completely lucid. Anyways, he has these uncontrollable contractions that are random and regular, if that makes sense. But, you'll be sitting talking with him, all of a sudden his leg will shoot out and his shoe will fly across the room. It just kicks so hard it
Oh,
flies off, stuff like that. Anyways, they got it all set up. There's a video of it and everything, but they did a nice job producing a nice video of it. But they went up to the top. They got him 110 foot up in a fir on campus. And when he got down, his mom commented like he had never been calm like that ever before in his life. And it
oh,
was a good hour and she said, I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was the tree or the climb but she said he was calm. And I've
yeah,
never seen him that way before. And you can see in the video, he's just up there. He's not moving. The only time I've been with John, and my son's kept up friendship with this guy, but, he's always kind of moving, right? And
yeah.
so it's interesting.
That's
You're talking to the choir when you're talking to arborists, because how many of us go up there and, you're there and you take that moment. It could be a few minutes I don't know, Tony, what do you call that moment? You're good with words.
It's tree time.
Tree time. Yeah.
I was in the top of a red oak with a friend of mine. We were both climbing, and I same realization or epiphany, just like, oh, this is where it was a very large tree with a lot of codominant leads all over the place, and it was like, oh, this is like being in a forest.
Yeah.
It just got it, and I'm with a friend. This is this is my quality of life. This is literally my Zen time. This is when, and I actually this was a couple years ago. I tried, I was getting set up, and I'm like, oh, I've got my earpiece in just in case I get a call. Like, I'll listen to some music. It's pretty low key, just doing some printing. Like, that lasted about 20 seconds. I shut it off. Like, I don't need this. When I'm in a tree, that is my zen. That is my flow.
Yeah.
My body is working with my
Yeah.
brain in the tree, and I'm not even thinking about it.
Yeah. It is quite amazing, isn't it? I think that.
Yeah, I've been. It is a tough one though because it is such a dangerous job. You know,
Yeah.
Tony, I think, was very lucky to start with family too. You know, I mean, you had Ben and your dad looking out for you. Hopefully,
Yeah. Well,
so,
it's so family is like, guilt and shame are training tools in the family business.
yeah,
So there is that end of it too. But it is. No, but I was fortunate. And you know what? I now, as a trainer, having trained for so long, I like doing climbing courses. And when you find that student, I envy them because I'll never climb a tree for the first time again. But I
Yeah.
right,
remember that feeling, how cool that was. And now it's a really good climb for me when I can get into that, that Zen mode where you're up there for 3, 4 hours and it's like you come down and you're like, it's what time? It's time to go
oh
home.
yeah,
Like I thought it was, I
yeah,
was just going to come down and get a sandwich. I thought it was lunch. Like, no, Tony, it's 4 in the afternoon. We've got to go, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and those, when I first started climbing, that was every day and it was wonderful, and now
yeah.
when it returns. So now when I do climbing courses with new climbers, it's like, just to see that is about as close as I get to
It,
experience that
it
again.
definitely
Yeah.
it's vicarious. It rubs off.
Right.
It's Madison, where I live in Wisconsin, is it's on an isthmus, so it's a strip of land between two lakes. One's really big, the other one's pretty big, and one of those things where just you drive past it, and it's like, oh yeah, there's lake, whatever. Oh, there's the state capitol. Yeah, it's pretty cool. But I've been trying to take time out and truly, truly appreciate things a little bit more. My brother's in Switzerland, he lives there, and mountains all over the place. He walks around the streets, picks figs, and I'll ask him, "Did you look at the mountains today?" And appreciate them because this is cool stuff. That we
Yeah.
just take for granted, and I'm trying to appreciate that and be more aware of it. So mindfulness, right?
Mm.
Yeah. It's a, it's like anything. It's a practice or a discipline. I think they're kind of one and the same. And even mindfulness, it's a discipline that you have to, remind yourself or do on purpose. Or it's the use it or lose it kind of concept,
Right,
and then it becomes more intuitive.
right,
You will change how you actually are will change, and it applies just to so many things. Like even we can go right back to what we started talking about, or we're talking about a half an hour ago, is the one-handed thing. If you make that effort to change, there will come a day where you realize you don't do it anymore and you can't believe you used to do it, or you just don't think to do it anymore.
right.
And you're okay with it now, you
Sure.
know, and it's hard not to become an evangelist of that as well, or to turn that into a religious connotation, like I used to one hand, but my God, I don't do it anymore, and you should, it's like everyone, you didn't get your journey maybe was long and varied and quite twisted and turned. So why would you force someone to take the short path, right?
Right.
Like it's, it's having that, space for everyone. And even that, it requires awareness and in the moment discipline, right? To see things for what they are.
And
Yeah, I
yeah,
like that.
same concept. I personally try not to should on people.
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
I don't say you should do this.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah. I think there is there is times I think for serious uh stern. I don't know if the word is for concentrated focus. When something is quite dangerous, that you need to say no. That's definitely something you don't want to do.
Sure. Yeah, 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 fair.
There's those moments, but I think it's overused. I think if that
the,
makes sense.
sure, the Brian Toss splicing, well, Angel at this point, and
Right.
but at a trade show and watching him, and there was kind of a heckler from the crowd, like, "Hey, why are you doing it that way? You should be doing it this way." As he's demonstrating his splice, and he's kind of humoring the guy, like, "Well, it's fine," and then guy keeps going, and I think Brian just got to the point where it just like he said, "Well, you could do it like that if you're a jackass," in front of the entire crowd. That shut that guy up. So, yes, there is a time and place to be very firm and to the point.
I could just see Brian doing that too.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Yes.
And he and you wouldn't even the guy wouldn't even realize what happened.
Exactly.
Tell him.
Yeah. It was perfect. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It's like, okay, I've taken it, it's enough volleys.
yeah.
I'm taking one shot. Here it
But
is.
but it was classic, just perfectly well done. He didn't say the guy is a jackass. He said you could do it that way. So you can choose to be
Yes,
a jackass if you want.
if you
Your choice. I'm not telling you should or you are. Yeah, all good.
I
Which
could
brings
see
us to
that
the
one
topic of
being.
rope and splicing. Kidding.
Yeah, no, I mean, I gotta admit, I was thinking about that when we were gearing up for this call, because that is something that's been, in the art and science outtakes. There's a video of you and Norm in the shed. What the heck are you guys doing? You're in here splicing away. We be out there working. The knitting parties, right?
Yeah, exactly. At Scott's. And I was thinking about that last night when I listened to the Norm Hall episode because I think it was Melvin you were talking about out at Samson Rope that came from a nautical background as opposed to a tree background and would ask us like, well, why would you trust that knot? I mean, I would trust a splice, and just the magic of the mystery of
Mm.
everything that goes into a splice and why people were a little reluctant to adopt splices in the first place. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I know. I was really intrigued by that at Samson when they said that. It was like, you guys trust these knots all over the place,
yeah,
and yet you have all this hang up over splicing, even doing the splices.
right,
That's what he was speaking to specifically, because everyone's like, "Well, I can't splice. We can't. How do you know it's safe?" He's like, "How the hell do you know you're not safe?"
right,
Like, and he went on to say, he said, he honestly felt it's easier to screw up a knot than a splice.
sure.
And so I always thought about that quite a bit. And it is, I don't know, would you say, Sean? Is it more common, or is it? I'd say it's a bit more common. Certainly, you combine them more.
Oh, now? Oh
Yeah,
gosh, around here, and it's kind of the same thing. Certain people set a tone, and it infiltrates to the people who are gonna stick around. And around here, I don't know any company or climber that doesn't climb with a splice. That still ties
right,
knots for terminations, at least.
right. Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, it's definitely a little progressive.
yeah. And Brian kind of spearheaded a lot of that in some ways, for sure.
Sure.
He was definitely like with the wand. Tony, did you guys, was that something part of like starting from, you remember splices from the start? Cause I know you splice also.
Uh,
Yeah.
well, yeah, and just well, when I worked in North Carolina on the storm, um, after a while it slowed down, but I liked it down there, so I wanted to figure something out. And I'd been hanging out at Cheryl. I knew Toby at the time, and back then, when the Cheryl operation was literally a shed behind the old
Yeah.
first building, and
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
basically Toby started the splicing division by hanging out there at night after hours and splicing stuff, and teaching himself to
Yeah.
splice. I
Yeah.
would hang out there with Eric when I would get done with tree work, or just in general. It evolved into being there a little bit more, but we'd splice. And I do remember Toby got an order from Samson. It was supposed to be double braid, but it was 10x, and
Yeah.
so hollow braid, and you know, did a little research on it, made some phone calls. Obviously didn't get online at the time, and maybe I did. I don't even remember. It's hard to remember, but basically, I said to Toby, I said, "Hey, can I mess with this stuff?" And he's like, "Yeah." They said we'd keep it. It was their mistake. So I said, "Yeah, let's." I higher rated strength, and just knowing how it's put together, it could work. And so I spliced an eye splice, just a long eye splice in a piece to tie in a porter wrap, and
Yeah.
it worked. It worked great. And so I mean, it, people are doing the same thing all over the place, split tails and things like that. But that was that was the Cheryl Tree intro to 10x, to hollow braids,
Okay.
and from there came the I tails, and
Yeah.
out of 10x and things like that. So um, yeah, that was a pretty interesting one. But yeah, I'd be back there splicing, and I remember one time there was a trade show, and it was TCI in Charlotte, so it was
Yeah.
close. And I stayed up all night splicing split tails, not eye and eyes, but just one eye, so you
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
the split tail. And I dipped the eyes in different colored, like whip dip, and
Yeah.
I had my whole array of special show ones, and I've got photos of just 100 tails spliced, and my hands were pretty raw, but it was a blast. So yeah, I've definitely done some slicing, and yeah.
And did you work with Stanley? You must have done stuff with Stanley as
Yep.
well then.
Definitely did a lot of stuff with Stanley, and Norman Scott, and I didn't fully appreciate it with when Norm would come out from the Chicagoland office to Scott's place in Virginia, and because to be fair, I cared about climbing trees. That was it. I remember, little tangent here, but Scott saying, "Hey, you know what kind of tree that is?" And I said, "No, like one with leaves," because I had no clue. I didn't appreciate any of that stuff. And he said, "Oh, that's Siberian elm, Ulmus pumila." I'm like, "Oh, that's great, old man. That's cool. Woohoo, whatever." Scott was 29 at the point, so yeah, 1 foot in the grave at that point. Um, my 23-year-old butt. Um, so yeah. Anyway, tangent, but yeah, the whole splicing thing. Yeah, I got to hang out with Scott and Norm, but I didn't fully appreciate it at the time, so I wasn't doing any splicing there. My intro was hanging out in that shed doing splicing at Cheryl. So
Interesting. I remember that.
yeah.
And Tony, where did you start?
I don't know. I just think it ended up just being a fun hobby. I mean, I had a little bit of a sailing background. I learned to sail when I was 16.
Okay.
So I'd been kind of exposed to Brian Toss and his work before
Oh,
I never knew it. It got tied into arboriculture. And then when I found out that, like, well, wait, the two hobbies were very, very similar. I started splicing rope. I just enjoyed doing it. Um, we had a dog at the time, so I needed dog toys. So you make a lot of dog toys when you're learning how to splice.
nice.
Right.
That's what I tell people now.
Absolutely.
If you're going to learn how to splice, you have to get a dog. Why? Like what? I'm like, because you're going to make a lot of dog toys, and you're going to need something to do with them because you should recycle stuff. And then and then it became sort of a little bit of it just became cost effective because I would always use 10x for basically disposable, ionized. Like when we had a lot of like white pines or like the weather was real crappy and things were just getting trashed. You'd go through like 3 or 4, split tails in a day or a week, because they're just like, I'm not cleaning this crap.
Yeah.
It came from there, and I just always enjoyed doing it.
So on split tails, I remember Stanley being religious, I could probably say, very emphatic, that the berry didn't make a bulge, it didn't make an hourglass, and that this was key to the rope tool. And he would call it until once those both ends are in, now it's a tool. It's not, because it's a whole different, because it wouldn't flatten anymore. It would function in a different, it'd be almost a double braid now. This hollow braid piece became a double braid. And when they started doing the stitching and they would use the same material, but they wouldn't splice it that way, or they would splice it, but they wouldn't bother to have the finesse of that overlay, and
Right.
you'd have the little lump. I always thought that was a big mistake. And you just don't see it, that the attention's paid to that kind of detail anymore. It seems like to me. Where are you guys at on that?
I, since I mean, I don't think I've ever bought an I tail. I mean, I've seen them. You know what I mean? But
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I I think I really, perfected the skill for myself of creating it so it didn't pull apart. There wasn't the hourglass, there wasn't the bulge.
yeah, yeah.
Just from the repetition of doing production splicing. Um, yeah, I can't address that because you know, I've never actually worked with one that
You
someone.
don't, it's hard to find tails that are spliced like that anymore.
Oh,
At least that's what Tony, do you not find that?
I see you don't see that quality of craftsmanship so much anymore. I find that even
oh,
at like trade shows and stuff, you pull hand spliced or buried spliced things off the rack, and it's just not a lot of it's not very good. Um,
No, no.
I can appreciate the stitch splicing and those things because that's mostly what I use now for my split tails, just because without the berry, the throat's shorter, so I can get a tighter knot.
yep,
Um, now, but I still prefer to splice my own things that tend to be custom, like friction savers and things that I need specific lengths for. Usually something that like comes longer than I would like. I'll prefer to splice my own. And you're right, you just don't see that now. Everything just seems to be a little bit more
Yeah,
mass produced, neither good nor bad.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't think they're unsafe. I'm not telling you there's anything unsafe out there, but you definitely lose that that craftsmanship that went into it.
And the functionality, I think, kind of
right.
goes with it. But I mean, video killed the radio star, and I'm not sure that these, devices like the wrench, at least still you use the hitch, but the runner's becoming so popular, and the zigzag, like, I don't know, maybe the devices are going to kill the knot star, or the hitch star.
Fair point. I think I mean, it's obviously still a useful skill, and I was fortunate enough to work on the knots video and for Arbor Master, and I
Yeah, right.
I'm still fascinated by knots. I mean, I love them, and it's nice to be able to. There are so many
Absolutely.
applications for knots still, even in tree work, but also
Oh yeah. Oh
there's another transfer to real life. It's always someone's trying to tie something down to a truck or something. It's like, oh yeah, I got an idea. It's like, oh, Sean probably knows that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, splicing is definitely more prevalent, and not even rope tools, like you say. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's I don't I swear that for tree actions we should have a our hour, this hour has 75 or 80 minutes. We get, it's always seems like sort of a natural segue. We rarely are done under an hour, but we're always, and I'm not saying we're done, but it kind of reaches a bio break point and a break point for just of a segue, but, we're getting near to that mark. You know, It's been a lot to think about on this episode. I like what you had to say about the well, your progress, particularly the realization of we're in a forest when you're in a canopy. I don't know that I can put my finger on when I experienced that, but it's a very true thing, and that you brought me back to the times. And I cannot, there is one time in particular, two that stick out for me. Once when we were training with the smoke jumper guys and we were at the planting fields arboretum in Long Island,
yeah,
on Long Island, New York. Were you there?
I was there a couple times.
Remember? And I remember they all got there. We were showing them getting up in the tree and we'd gotten everybody up there, and I just foot locked up like the old fashioned way because that's all
Yeah,
we did back
yeah,
then. And they had been taking some time to get up there, and I was helping guys on the ground, and I was kind of last one on the ground, and everyone was up there, and I just, I wasn't the fastest in the world, but I was decent enough, and they were shocked at how fast I got up there, which was kind of a cool feeling. But then just sitting there with everybody, and
yeah.
there was I think it was a eucalyptus grove. They were all in a circle. It was like a cathedral, and we were all in those trees. There was like 50 people or something. And that moment just really sticks out in my mind for some reason. And then there was another time when we went for a climb when the competition was in Princeton or, not Princeton, on the East Coast. Uh,
Baltimore,
no, no,
get one.
it's where we had the big rainstorm and there was the flood, and Bettis was, I don't even know if Bettis had started winning it. He may have just started winning then. This would have been in like 98,
Okay.
99.
What?
There's a college in California has the same name of the same,
Okay.
there's a university with the same name. What is it? And Bartlett has a research facility up there. Isn't it Princeton?
I don't know.
Isn't there?
I'm drawing a blank.
I'm drawing a blank. Anyways, a bunch of us went climbing, and there was like Bettis, Mark Bridge, myself. I want to say Ron Hartle, maybe. What was neat is there was people from all over different countries, and we were
Yeah.
all up in the trees hanging out. And, just having that experience, I remember that too. It's cool. So anyways, thanks for that.
Yeah, my favorite tree is American Beech. I was on a podcast last week being interviewed. And they asked me my favorite tree. I said American Beech, of course, duh. Brian Kotwick actually drew me on the cover of some sort of ISA publication, and I said, Brian, you drew me into beech. He said, that's my favorite tree, and he said, yeah, I know. That's why I drew you into beech. My my brother was going to school in Chicago. My brother who lives in Switzerland. We would converge in Milwaukee, and um, we would climb the fourth biggest American beach in the state, and it was just clean
Wow.
trunk for 60 feet, gorgeous. We would get up there, eat lunch, look at the city, look at Lake Michigan, it was just magical. So pretty amazing.
It is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know, Tony, you got 100 of them yourself.
Oh yeah. Sure.
Tony, what I remember about this kind of topic with you is one of our episodes you mentioned about how you got to go back to trees that you've been in more than once
Yeah.
and relive that experience and watch it over years of, I remember pruning this 10 years ago or when it was like, that's also a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, you've been maybe doing this work too long when like you're on the third homeowner. Like the original people that built the house, and you got to know them, and then they've sold, and it's like Jesus.
It's testament to how good you are. They pass your name along. That's a good thing.
Right on. Well, thanks, Sean, for taking time out of your valuable day and your valuable time to share with us. And, we reserve the right to do over. So, we haven't repeated yet, but, I'm sure it'll happen.
Oh, it's one of those things. An hour from now, I'll go, oh, I should have said this. I should have talked about this. So I did that after the
Yeah.
podcast last week too. So, but yeah, this has been a blast. I actually, I think listening to the Norm episode yesterday really, really helped get a feel for the vibe. So it's, it's cool. I miss you guys. So it's good to see you.